If you're currently struggling using your frequent flyer points to get to Europe this year, then this video is going to be an absolute game changer for you. In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can use your frequent flyer points to get business class to and from Europe, and I'm going to show you an exact booking walkthrough taking you through step by step exactly what you need to do. There are people out there that charge thousands of dollars to follow the same techniques that I'm about to share with you today. The truth about using your points to get to Europe is that there's so many variables that we can tweak that it's actually surprisingly easy getting there. Now, before I get into the bulk of the video, I'm going to give all of this information out to you completely for free. If you do enjoy this type of content, please let me know by liking and subscribing and sharing it to some of your friends. If I get positive feedback from this type of video, I will make future routes in the future, like USA, Japan, Bali. If you have a preference, just leave a comment letting me know what route I should do next. So to start with, I think the most common frustration is people are jumping on the Qantas or the Velocity website and they're just typing in Sydney to London, and then they're getting frustrated when there's no reward seat availability. The truth is that is what everyone with points is doing. See, most people are earning points these days, but most people are not educated on how they can properly use their points. So because of this, when the average person jumps onto the Qantas website and they have an idea in their head to go onto a holiday, if their holiday is in London, they will naturally just type in their place where they are now, for example, Sydney, and they will type in the place that they want to go, London, and then they will check the Qantas website. And if there's no availability for that date, they'll just give up. I'm going to show you in a second what you should be doing in order to maximize your chances at actually using your points to get to Europe. To give you a bit of context, I have a trip to Europe planned already this year in June. I'm still undecided if I'm actually going to go ahead with that trip or not, just because last year I did a lot of traveling and I was in momentum, posting on Escape of the Week very frequently, making progress in the gym, and a poorly timed trip for me personally can really affect the momentum. And once I break that momentum, it takes a lot of effort for me to get back into gear. I'm just not sure if June will be the appropriate time for me to do that Euro trip. We'll see in coming months. But the Europe trip that I have planned was booked entirely on points. Half of that trip, so the flights home, are in first class on Emirates, and the first half of that trip is in business class using a combination of Qantas points and Velocity points. So to give you my example itinerary, I was doing Brisbane to Singapore using Velocity points. It cost me 67,000 Velocity points. From here, I would have a one-night stay in Singapore, and then the next day I would catch a flight from Singapore to Paris on Air France using Qantas points. This costs 104,000 Qantas points in order to go from Singapore to Paris, and this is in business class the entire way. From here, I would have a few weeks in Europe just exploring around. I haven't booked out the itinerary just yet. If you have any recommendations, please leave a comment letting me know where I should go if I do end up going on this trip. But coming home, I have Brussels to Dubai. And the reason I have Brussels is because Emirates actually have two different types of first class products available. They have a 777 first class product, which for me is the pinnacle of first class traveling. You get your own private suite, floor to ceiling doors, completely private. I thought it would be super cool to check that out. Emirates are in the middle of upgrading their whole fleet to this type of first class cabin, but for the moment it is on fairly limited routes. Brussels to Dubai is one of those limited routes where it's got the 777 first class product available. That flight from Brussels to Dubai cost me 89,000 Qantas points to do that in first class. From here, being in Dubai, I do need to get back to Australia, and that was booked first class from Dubai to Brisbane for 170,000 Qantas points. Now, something to mention with booking Emirates is that the taxes you pay in addition to the points are extremely high. I think for the Brussels to Dubai flight, it was about $500 in cash that I would pay in addition to the points. And the flight from Dubai to Brisbane was about $1,000 in cash in addition to the points. On other airlines, those taxes are probably 1/3 of what you're going to pay. But in my opinion, flying on Emirates first class has been a bucket list item for a while now, and I think it is worth the money. That is just personally the route that I booked for the Europe trip that I have planned in June. But now let's talk about if we were generally booking a full trip in business class, how many points would we need? As a rule of thumb, Each way, I would budget about 200,000 Qantas or Velocity points. This means getting to Europe from Australia, budget 200,000 points in business class, and coming home from Europe to Australia, you'll also need another 200,000 Qantas or Velocity points if you want to do that trip in business class. The trip that I discussed personally with a mixture of first class and business class cost me 432,000 points. So if you want a combination of business and first class, you want to have slightly more than 200,000 points each way. Now, before we go over to the computer and I show you exactly what to do, a couple of things that we need to mention. To start with, you really want to have a strong foundation of points that you can transfer to lots of different airlines. Personally, the way that I do this is by having Amex Platinum membership points. Having Amex Platinum membership points allows me to transfer my points to 12 airlines, including Velocity, Qantas, Singapore Airlines, and Emirates. This is a really big deal because it gives you so much flexibility and so many additional routes that you can book just by using these membership points. If we are strictly limited to Qantas points, it just greatly reduces our route options. One thing to consider is that Amex membership points convert 2-to-1 into Qantas or Velocity points. This means if you have 2 Amex membership points, it will only convert into 1 Qantas or Velocity point. So to summarize, if we were working off 200,000 points each way in business class, you're going to want a minimum of 800,000 Amex Platinum membership points. Now, you don't need Amex Platinum membership points, but ideally you'll have some sort of combination between Qantas and Velocity points. Now, the second thing that we have to mention is that we have to ideally have fairly broad search results. This means that the dates that we're traveling are somewhat flexible. The cities that we're arriving to and departing from are also somewhat flexible. The more flexible we can be, the greater our chance at getting in business class is going to be. Now, you can have a first preference in mind, but you may not get the exact flight and the exact dates that you're after. So having some sort of flexibility is going to be key to making all of this work. An example of what I mean by being somewhat flexible is ideally, I would just have the idea in my head that I want to do a Euro summer at some stage during the months when it's hot, and I want to go for roughly 3 to 4 weeks. This type of thinking and not having specific dates in mind is going to give us our best shot at getting business class seats. The third thing we need for this is having a Seats.aero Pro account. If you don't have it, you can use my referral code, which I'll put in the video description. Seats.aero Pro is an absolute must when we're planning our Euro trips. In fact, I would go as far to say as you can't book this route unless you have a Seats.aero Pro membership. This video is not even sponsored by Seats.aero. This is just showing you the techniques that I use, and I couldn't book a Europe trip without this tool. Now, the fourth thing to mention is that this does take a bit of work. Planning these sorts of trips from one side of the world to the other side of the world with multiple different flights is not easy. If after you learn this whole process and you can't be bothered putting in this work, I have a private group on Instagram where I share all of these reward findings that I find to my subscribers. This way, every day you'll get the best reward seats that I've found. I share the direct routes and the direct dates on there, so all you have to do is go onto the Qantas or the Virgin website, put in the dates and the routes that I give you, and you can go ahead and book them. All of this searching and connecting the dots from one city to the other is gone in my private group. But I do think it's important that I teach you how you can do this yourself as well, because in an ideal world, you won't be in my private group for forever because you'll know exactly what to do. Now, some context for what we're about to book is I just want to book a Euro summer. I want to be in Europe for about 3 to 5 weeks, somewhere like that. It needs to be business class or first class using points, and I want to budget for roughly around 400,000 points for the entire trip. Now that we have a bit of that context, let's go over to the computer and I'm going to show you exactly what we need to do. So I'm over here at my computer where I'm going to show you the exact process that I go through when I want to find business class reward seats to Europe. So to begin, I'm on the Seats.aero website. Their URL is really weird. It's literally just Seats.aero, which is like there's no .com or anything. I just think that's very unique. Anyway, while we're on here, the first thing is you need a pro membership. If you don't have the pro membership, I'm pretty sure you can't use this search tool here, which is what we're going to be doing. I'm pretty sure you can only use the explore feature and then go into the individual airline programs like that. But for this example, we want to use the search tool. After you've clicked on the search tool, the first thing that I need you to know is to use these multi-city codes. These multi-city codes are going to give us the flexibility that we need in order to find the reward seats that we're after. So the ones that we're going to be using in today's video will be ASA, which is Asia's large airports. It's going to search Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Korea, Hong Kong, Kuala Lumpur, Taipei, China. I actually got all of them, which is cool. The next one we will use will be using Europe. EUR, which is Europe Large Airports. I'm not even going to try to attempt all of what these airports stand for, but these are all of the major ones within Europe that we want to potentially fly into. The other one that we'll be using will be AUL, which is Australia's Large Airports, leaving from Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, and Adelaide. Now, in an ideal world, they will have flights departing from the city that you are currently in. But if it means that we're going to get 24 hours in business class, and the only trade-off is that we have to travel to Sydney or travel to Melbourne or travel to Brisbane, then we may want to consider that. So now that we understand the airport codes, let's go back to the search tool. So to begin, we really want to make this as easy as possible for ourselves. So in an ideal world, we will travel from Australia and arrive in Europe, and we don't have to go ahead and book multiple different flights if we don't have to. So for that, I'm just going to type in AUL to EUR, and we want to travel in Euro summer dates. I'm just going to put the middle of July there and put this tool here to 60 days. Plus or minus 60 days will now show us 2 months either side of that. So I'm going to see some of May, June, July's availability, as well as July, August, September's availability. Show individual flights, I just leave that unticked. Come down to the advanced filters, direct flights only. You can tick that, I just leave it unticked just to see what else is available. Below 400 in fees. If you tick that, it's going to exclude a lot of Emirates flights, so I just leave that unticked. Everything else is unticked. If you did have to travel with a minimum of 2 people, you would put this in, but for today's example, I'm just going to keep it at 1, and I'm just going to search that results there. Now, when this data arrives, a couple things that we want to do. To start with, this is showing us reward availability for just the Qantas frequent flyer program. I haven't put in the Virgin frequent flyer program just yet, but I will do that in a second. So let's just leave it at Qantas for the time being. When I get this data, I want to click on business. That will now filter through flights ranked by in order of the lowest amount of points needed to travel in business class through to the highest amount of points needed to travel in business class. So straight off the bat, this is showing us that for these months here, May, June, July, August, September, there are basically no flights from Australia into Europe just using Qantas points. Another side thing we can do is if I hold down Shift and click on date, it's now ranking the business class flights by firstly in order of lowest points to highest points, but then also giving it to us in date order. Now from this data, we can clearly see that you have very little options with Qantas points if we just type in Australia into Europe. Pretty much the only option we have here is with the Emirates flights. You're going to pay $2,000 in taxes plus 140,000 points. That's from Perth to Paris. That's only on one date here. So this data is not going to work with us. From here, if I had access to both Velocity points and Qantas points, like what I recommend in almost all of my videos, I would then go over to the programs and I would select Velocity points. I would update that search, wait for it to load. When this data loads, I will click on business and I will also hold down Shift and click on date. From here, You're only going to get these blue bubbles because of how far the flights are. You do have to have a stopover. Generally, we want to look for green bubbles, which are direct flights, but because we're doing this Europe from Australia to Europe, you're naturally going to have a stopover in Doha or Dubai or Singapore. That would explain why there's no green bubbles here. Now from here, just by adding in the Velocity Frequent Flyer program, we have a lot more flights that we can actually book. So going through these data results here, you can see I can get from Melbourne to London, 174,000 points. Brisbane to Frankfurt, Brisbane to Paris. So there's plenty of options here. These are in July, these are in August. There's actually a fair few options getting from Australia to Europe directly with Velocity Points. The good thing with the Velocity Frequent Flyer program and using Seats.aero as well is it's telling me how many seats there are on this route. It appears like there's 2 seats on most of these routes, which is great if you're traveling with a partner. Now this video would be way too pointless if I just showed you to go from AUL, which is Australia, to EUR and just look for the Velocity flights and then find a seat. For this example, we want to assume that none of these are suitable and that it's a bit more tricky for us. So let's just assume that none of these flights were going to work for us. What would I do then? From this data, we can tell that it's going to be much easier if we use Velocity Points than it will be using Qantas Points. So to start, I'm going to show you how we would use Velocity Points getting to Europe. Now we want some sort of hint on how we could get to Europe from Australia. So to do that, I'm going to click on one of these flights. I'm going to click on business because that is what it had available. I'll then click on these little arrows and it's going to give me some further details as to where this plane is going. I can see here Perth to Doha, Doha to Paris. So I'm going to use some of that data to get us into the next stage. Instead of going from AUL to EUR, I will type in AUL to Doha. I will then search this route to see what availability it gives us. Like we always do, click on business, hold down shift, click on date. This is now filtering through the dates available. So with this data, there's 2 things to pay attention to. Number 1 is the points needed. It's ranking this firstly via business class points needed because I hit that first and then I clicked shift and hit date. So it's ranking it by points needed. You can see here 89,000 points needed, and then it's going to jump up to 119,000, and that's the most it's going to give us. So for this flight, we want to look for the little green bubbles. The green bubbles indicate to us that it's a direct flight from Brisbane to Doha. Now, if we go through this data, it looks like on average, you're getting 4 reward seats on each of these planes, which is amazing. From here, we're not trying to pinpoint specific dates just yet. What I'm trying to do is pay attention to these dates and just get a general understanding of which sort of months have the best availability for us to get to Doha. It looks here like July is a fairly safe bet. There's a lot of flights in here from early July, mid-July, late July, late July. So I'm going to start looking to see if I can get a flight from Doha into Europe. So I'll type in EUR and I want to look for flights around mid to late July. Once I'm here, like normal, click on business, hold down shift, click on date. It's now telling me all of these flights that I have available, and you can see there are a lot of flights. The first thing to notice is this is 44,000 points required. They've also got 60,000 points required. They've also got 74,000 points required, but you can see just how many reward flights there are from Doha to Europe for the search results that we put in. This is amazing because it pretty much confirms that if I can get from Australia to Doha, I can very easily get from Doha into Europe. Now, because the variable with the least amount of data available was Australia to Doha, I will firstly go back to the Australia to Doha flights, find the flight that we want to go on, and then I will work from Doha onto Europe. So now that we're back onto the flights getting to Doha, we know that pretty much any of these dates will be able to get from Doha to somewhere in Europe. So let's just find something that's going to work well with us. For this example, I'm going to use the 15th of July, Brisbane to Doha, 4 seats available. It's going to cost us 119,000 points plus $476 in cash. This is on the Velocity frequent flyer program. So let's work to this as a starting point. Right, now that we have that flight, we need to go back to Doha to Europe and find our flight that will get us into Europe. Like before, click business, hold down shift, click dates, and we want to go to, let's just say for example, we wanted to travel to Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona, or London. We would locate those flights, which is the 74,000 points route flights. Now from here, we know that our flight to Doha will arrive on the 15th or the 16th of July. I didn't actually check when the plane lands, but let's go through to July flights to see what the closest one is. Right, so we're now in July. A safe play would be if I booked a flight on the 17th of July, and that will be 2 seats from Doha to Paris, 74,000 points for this flight, plus $374 in taxes. That will be on Qatar business class, leaving on the 17th of July. That's going to work well for this. So to summarize that, we just went from Brisbane to Doha, 119,000 Velocity points on the 15th of July. That plane will then arrive either on the 15th or the 16th. We'll have a night or two in Doha, and from there we will go from Doha to Paris on the 17th of July. It's going to cost us 74,000 points. Once we have completed that Doha flight arriving in Paris, we have just done a full one-way trip in business class using our points from Australia, arriving in Europe. Now getting home, you can just do that exact process in reverse, but I do want to try and do something with Qantas points as well, because I know plenty of people have Qantas points and they're frustrated that they can't use them getting to and from Europe. Now let's do our best now to try and figure out how we can use our Qantas points to get back to Australia. Using Qantas points is going to be 2 options. The first is going to be going through Dubai with Emirates. The second option is going to be going through Asia with our Qantas points. Typically it's going to be on China Airlines, or it could be on Emirates, or it could be on Cathay Pacific. Qantas do have a number of different airlines that we can utilize getting to and from Europe. But like always, we always want to make it as easy as possible for ourselves. What I mean by that is we want to have a flight with a long amount of distance that we can fly in, ideally in business class. So for this, I'm just going to type in EUR, which is searching Europe's large airports, and I want to type in Dubai. Why did that autocorrect? DXB, Dubai, and let's search some flights there. Now I said right from the start that we wanted to have somewhere between 3 to 5 weeks in Europe, so that would put us in early to mid-August for flights coming home. Right now, using Qantas points, we want to check from Europe into Dubai. Ideally, we're going to go from Dubai into Australia. That's going to be the most seamless route. Another way that you can do this is you can go via Singapore or Hong Kong or Taipei, one of those routes. If Dubai wasn't an option here, we would be searching ASA, which is going to show us the Asian airports. But for this example, let's hope that we get something via Dubai, as that is the easiest option, and I do tend to like the Emirates business class product. So we're going to go through here, and we're looking for something in early to mid or late August. Remember, right from the start, we wanted somewhere between 3 to 5 weeks, being somewhat flexible with dates, just depending on the flight availability. You can see here we've got like early August. We don't really have too much in the middle of August, and then we've got late August. So because of this, I think early August is going to be a little bit too rushed. Middle of August is somewhat out of the question. So we're going to look for early to late flights in August. That's going to give us about 5 weeks of time in Europe. You can simply pick any one of these flights that's going to work out best, but I'm going to use the 21st of August. That flight is Rome to Dubai. 61,000 points are required plus 433 euros in taxes. Something to note with the Emirates routes, Emirates have high taxes. Now for me personally, I don't mind it because I would probably be going on the first class cabin here if that flight was available. But if you did want to reduce the amount that you're paying in taxes, you would 1, ideally use Velocity points because they've got lower taxes, or 2, look for a flight going through Asia and ideally not a Emirates flight. If you can find a Finnair flight, a British Airways flight, a Cathay Pacific flight flying into Asia, you're going to pay a lot less in flight taxes. But we've already started this example, so let's just use the 21st of August, Rome to Dubai, 61,000 points. Once we've found that flight that we want, let's put in Dubai, type in AUL, and search. From here, click business, dates. We can now see if we can find any flights that will link up perfectly with our Dubai flight. Now we know that our flight going to Dubai is on the 21st. I didn't check out the flight specifics, but let's assume it's landing either on the 21st or the 22nd, so we want to be flying from the 23rd. You've got Dubai to Adelaide here, which I would probably go ahead with. If you wanted to have a couple of nights in Dubai, you could catch the later one there. If we were in Brisbane, Melbourne, or Sydney, we are out of luck here for August flights, so we are going to have to go via Adelaide. Now for me personally, I'm probably going to select this 23rd of August flight. 104,000 Qantas points to book it, plus $1,252 in taxes. But you can see here, we've now gone from Europe to Dubai. That's going to cost us 66,000 Qantas points in business class on Emirates. Then from Dubai, we're going to spend a night or two there, catch a flight from Dubai to Adelaide. It's going to cost us 104,000 points plus $1,252 in taxes. And we have now used our Qantas points to get from Europe back to Australia. Now I hope this video has given you the foundations on how you can go about using your points to book Europe in business class. Obviously you can tweak some of the variables if you want to avoid certain cities, if you want to avoid some of the airlines, but it should give you an understanding on how you can use your points to get to and from Europe. If you enjoyed this type of content, please let me know if you want me to do other routes, and be sure to like and subscribe to let me know that this sort of content is useful for you. That's all for today's video. I will see you in the next one.